think Trick of the Tail, we're definitely worried about what came next, and we definitely thought, would it work? So we did what we always do, is we said, let's go in and try a bit of writing, see what happens.
I think we had a great deal of fear about how people would see us without Peter. I think we were very confident we could write material that was strong enough. And the problem was obviously, first of all, finding a singer. And then even if we found a singer, how people would respond to that new singer.
Although I loved Pete and still do, you know, my feeling of, well, we'll just carry on as a four-piece. Forget the vocals, we'll just carry on as an instrumental four-piece, which is what I said. There was no slight on him, it was actually meant to be the fact that I thought we could just carry on and still do it. And in fact, in doing it, proved to people that we weren't Pete's band.
Well, I think initially what happened was that, you know, we sort of thought at a certain point that Phil could probably sing some of the songs. He'd done obviously done things like More Fool Me and done a lot of backup singing to Pete on various songs prior. So we felt he knew he had a lovely soft voice. So we thought things like Ripples and Madman Moon, things like that would be great for his voice. But we really weren't sure that he was. We never even contemplated that he'd be any right for Squonk or Volcano. These things that required a bit more power. And yes, we did get. We'd obviously recorded the song, and we did get this singer that we liked, and he came in and sang on it.
He was our big hope. He'd made it through those audition processes and sort of arrived. But we weren't in a sort of even thinking about keys for singers. I mean, now we just sort of, you know, can you sing this, or do you want us to take it down a bit? You know, and you think about it, but we didn't think about it then. Such was our contempt for the vocals. But so we laid down all the backing tracks and invited this guy in to sing. Squonk was the first one, and it was plainly the wrong key for the guy. So there was no way it was going to sound good.
And so then Phil said, let me have a try at it, because I think the rather sort of the crunchy voice that Peter had, that cracks a bit, you know, that side of the voice, Phil hadn't really got or done yet, but he had a go at it, and it sounded good. That was probably the turning point, really.
I think after years of doing, The Artful Dodger and being trained as a child actor and all that kind of stuff, I think that he had the idea in his younger days that being a drummer was a much more respectable gig. And he probably wouldn't have come forward as the lead singer if Peter hadn't left. But then, you know, in the old days, Pete and Phil used to twin vocals a lot of the time, and it used to sound like a kind of automatic double track, because they had a similar kind of edge to their voices. I mean, different singers, of course, both very soulful in different ways. But I don't know, I'm just very glad it happened, frankly.
They got no horns and they got no tail. They don't even know of our existence.
And then we went through the songs one by one, knocking them off, really. And we finished the album, I don't know how long it took, a couple of weeks probably, finished the album, and said, right, that's it. Now let's find a singer to go and take it on the road, you know. So we went again through a very half-hearted audition process. And really we didn't do it seriously. We just thought we'd find a singer, and then we realised once we started looking that we were just doing the same thing we'd just done. So my first wife, I believe, suggested, why don't you do it? And I kind of, the whole idea of coming out from behind the drum kit appalled me, really. But as I'd done the album, there didn't seem to be much alternative, so I suggested it to the guys. They weren't sure that if I could do it from a physical point of view, I think. They knew I could sing, but they didn't think I could maybe just do what singers do. And I didn't know if I'd find a drummer that I wouldn't be looking around and tutting at, you know.
I think the fact that we've got Bill Bruford at that point, you know, was an important addition for us. So a drummer that Phil understood, you know, that knew and liked, and felt could do the job. So that kind of whole package sort of happened all in one go like that, really.
I think it's pretty rare that a band has got that ability to be able to, as I say, within the ranks, have someone that could just follow on that professionally.
There was just a lot of luck involved in it, that we had a singer who was good enough in the band to take over from Peter, and for that reason I think the fans had no trouble, you know, considering Phil as the man.
On your left and on your right, crosses are green, the crosses are blue. Your friends didn't make it through.
I remember Trick of the Tail, we had a brief. We said, let's try and be a bit more instrumental. Because we thought, some of our strongest passages in the past, without Peter, were instrumental moments. But of course, as always, you have no control and it's a heavily vocal album.
Through a crack in Mother Earth, blazing hot, the molten rock spills out over the land.
Dance on a Volcano was the most started off for day one when Mike, Phil and I were there, because Steve in fact was finishing off his solo album, and we came in the studio and we just started improvising, and what became the first part of Dance on a Volcano came out of that. And I was at that moment, I felt, having come in with a little bit of trepidation, thinking, well, what's going to happen, how's it going to be without Pete and all that. We wrote that and I thought, this is great, I'm really excited by this, and I think it set us off in a really good direction.
It kind of embodied all that Genesis did well, which was quite majestic, powerful stuff, interesting rhythms, good melodies. It's like an AR man, don't I? But it's actually, it did. I think Volcano really, the intro had a drama and excitement, and if you'd heard it, you'd kind of go, oh, what's that? That sounds great. That's an important track. I'm not sure the rest of it was always up to scratch, but the intro and the sort of first bit I thought was very strong.
I came in perhaps with the most complete songs. Mike came in with sections, and as did Steve, and as it happened, the bits we used to sort of finish them off were my bits. So I ended up being credited on every track on this album, which was sort of like quite funny. But on a song like, for example, Entangled, which was Steve had come in with this really nice sort of guitar bit, and it happened to be in 3/4, and I had this chorus that was sort of hanging around. I hadn't got any home for it, which was in 3/4 as well. So we tried the two together, and it worked really well. And it kind of, what Steve had written really didn't have a chorus. It needed something to kind of lead you to it. So the sort of, if we can help you, we will, that bit. I had this sort of split. I'd written on a piano, in fact, and I'd transferred it to guitar, and with the voice then singing what the piano used to play, which is kind of like the way the chords changed, produced quite a nice sort of harmony piece, I think. And it makes for, I think Entangled is one of my favourite songs on the album. I think it makes for a very strong combination with a lyric written by Steve, which I think works really well as well.
If we can help you, we will.
What I used to do was probably throw in a few riffs and licks rather than whole songs. Although there was Entangled and there was Los Endos and the outro of, what was it, Dance on a Volcano, those sort of things, I'd sort of kick in with those ideas. But I'd just come off the back of having done a solo thing, so I was fairly dry of ideas, and I was having to think on my feet, and it wasn't really until the following album, Wind and Wuthering, that I'd amassed a lot of stuff to throw at everybody.
A fair amount of the album was from scratch. Like Volcano was just a jam that started. Squonk just sort of came on the day, I think, I can't remember. And Los Endos was a sort of jam thing that was developed. So it was quite sort of live and jammy at that stage.
Squonk was a musical standout. I mean, I've always liked that. The idea of that. I mean, that was always our Zeppelin kind of song. That was our kind of a bit of Kashmir, a bit of When the Levee Breaks. I mean, when you listen to it, it doesn't sound like that, but that's what it was meant to be. These heavy guitar chords and sort of me with my John Bonham hat on. And so I think that's probably one of the standout tracks.
And I remember doing Madison Square Garden, where we used to start off with, and that might have been a slightly later era, but we were still doing Squonk. We were using that as an opener. And I remember going on stage and the whole audience standing up as we kicked in with the first strains of that. And it was that was a really powerful live number.
It's a funny thing, really, because when the time we did it, I mean, things like Volcano and Squonk and everything were ones I really liked. But coming back to it, the ones I actually prefer all the soft songs, I think. Mad Bad Moon has always been a big favourite of mine, I suppose, but it was a song I wrote on my own completely. And, I was very pleased with some of the things. I mean, the middle is not played as well as it should be, But the verse parts and everything, it's just nice. The chord sequences, the chord changes and things, I was very pleased with them at the time, because they're sort of like, they're unusual, but then don't necessarily sound too unusual. And I think that's a good thing about a song. I don't want it to sound weird. I just want it to sort of be kind of, and it's very romantic, I suppose. And I think that works very well. Let me think what else. Well, Los Endos, I think it works very well. I mean, it certainly sounded a great live piece. It was great fun to play, and I felt it really rounded off the album well.
It was kind of more my baby than anybody else's. I mean, obviously melodically, I'd say down, go back down, 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 and Tony would sort of make sense of the kind of the humming it. And of course, it's become over the years, it's one of the long-lasting songs from that album because it was a great stage song. And then we reprised Squonk at the end of it because that was kind of gave the album a bit of a bookends feel. So that's always been one of my favourite things on the record, Los Endos.
I think Los Endos, in a way, is quite a special track, and it's becoming more and more special in my mind as time goes on, actually, because not many bands do a sort of what I call a 7-minute instrumental with a sort of jazzy feel. And we're still playing it.
Album covers can give a very strong identity to an album, I think, and Trick or Treat is one where that's the case, really. And you get this idea of a sort of storybook sort of feel out of it, and the songs are quite distinct and a lot of the songs do have a kind of story to them, and I think that makes it very strong.
I would say that the cover for Trick or Treat was out of character, actually, with Hypnosis, given what they normally do and what we know them for. The Floyd covers and some Zeppelin and 10cc and our other ones, they didn't kind of do this rather slightly romantic-y, softer drawing style.
Slightly sort of Dickensian kind of look, I think, which worked just so nicely on the brown on the sort of on that kind of parchment-like paper. When it came out, I think it was a funny thing. There was a certain element of the public who really were quite glad to not have Pete there, because he's sort of made it kind of seems so strange, in some ways. But I mean, part of that I really liked. But anyhow, there was a kind of some people who had had a bit of trouble with Pete. It was a time to reassess, put it like that. And we were also lucky that at that particular period in time, you didn't need a hit single, because obviously there's no hit single on this album. And I think a lot of the existing fans really liked it, and then we got some new fans, and it just seemed to sort of take off, I suppose, really. I mean, I think the previous album having been a double album as well meant that this album had a chance, it was a bit easier for people to take in. And as you say, it starts very strong with Volcano. I think people put it on and think, yeah, that sounds fantastic. And with songs like sort of, obviously, like Entangled and Ripples, which have got very strong choruses, I think it works on a lot of levels.
And then it did very well. And I think a lot of people had a reappraisal of Genesis too, actually. I think people who hadn't liked us heard a slightly different sound and gave us another chance.
It felt great because the band was on the grow. We managed to survive the loss of our erstwhile lead singer, and Phil was doing a great job taking over. I mean, doing it in another kind of way. I mean, in a much less dressy, more kind of earthy kind of way.
Yeah, audiences really were behind us, but behind me succeeding in this new role, because they still had their band, I mean, if I hadn't made it happen, or if it hadn't have worked, or if they hadn't embraced the album and then the live version of it, we wouldn't be here talking now. So I think that people didn't want the band to split up, and I think they, this was their thing. They wanted to try, annual visits to Toronto, annual visits to Montreal, Chicago, Sheffield. People like to see the band, and so I think they kind of they were willing it to happen, willing it to work.